And hello everyone, this is Bouncy Springs here, and today we're taking a look at the Tier 8 New Orleans of the American Cruiser line. So, as I did for the previous video with the North Carolina, I'm just going to follow this order. A game is going to be playing in the background, and I'm just going to briefly go over the pros, the cons, and how to go around this ship. So, let's begin with the pros. So first of all, I would say it is a very utility-oriented ship, with the fact that you have different types of consumables. Of course, radar being the most prominent, but you can also serve a very strong anti-aircraft function. And I'm not 100% sure if New Orleans also has hydroacoustic search, but that's something that maybe you can help me clarify in the comments. Now, of course, another very big advantage of the New Orleans is that she's small, she's nimble, just size-wise. She's barely half of, or a little bit more than half of the Kutuzov, but overall it's a speedy ship. It's difficult to hit. It's very maneuverable. You have some of the best tier 8, of course, in cruiser-wise, turn radius and rudder shift time, and of course this can be played with the modifications that you can install on your ship. But definitely with a very strong, let's say, a battleship-oriented game as it is right now, definitely being small and agile is, I think, a phenomenal, very, 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 very strong advantage. You have very strong armor-piercing capabilities, I have to say, especially versus cruisers. It's really a Citadel bonanza. Versus battleships, that's something to be seen later on, but let's just say that you're not going to be hunting battleships in this kind of ship. Concealment is something the New Orleans excels at. By default, it's at 14.7, but with or something around that. But with the right captain skills, camouflages, and talents, I think you can drop that pretty much to 10.2. It's quite not as good as Mogami's 9.8, but it's very, very, very close. And once again, with so many battleships around there, not being spotted, definitely the way to go. Other thing is, even though overall the ship doesn't have fantastic armor, it is still better armor than Tier 7 Pensacola, and to some extent, take this with a grain of salt. You can nose tank armor-piercing shots from cruisers, and overall you'll be taking not so much damage. Of course, from battleships you're just a tin can and you'll get crushed. Okay, moving on to the cons. Now this is, I think, the biggest limitation for the New Orleans is her limited range. Her limited range will get you about at 15 kilometers. If you really spec into her, you can push her to 16 kilometers, but still, it is the range is limited, and even if you want to buff the range, you'll be eating at some other of your benefits. And with so many battleships around, I think this is a very negative point. So this will influence your playstyles, or if you're just used to being, let's say, classic open water HE spammer, I'm sorry, this really won't work with the New Orleans. You'll have to try to hug the islands more, use your concealment to the best of your abilities, and overall try to play sneaky. So another thing is her armaments. As much as she had, as I said before, very good armor-piercing capabilities, unfortunately, she does have less guns compared to the Pensacola, and they are the exact same caliber. Sure, the rate of fire is slightly better, the traverse is slightly better once again, and it is possible to kite, but still, that lack of a fourth turret, so going down from 12 to 9 guns, still to me feels like a pretty strong downgrade, and generally affects your DPM. So yeah, and also speaking of DPM, you have the worst rate of fire among all Tier 8 cruisers. So you see that this combination, I think, puts off a lot of people from playing the New Orleans. And of course, as you're playing an American cruiser, say goodbye to torpedoes. So as much as you want to play sneaky, just remember you don't have that torpedo, let's say, advantage or extra tool within your arsenal. It's just not possible, since you're going down the American line as you've lost your torpedoes starting from Tier 6. Last thing, well, more or less last thing for the cons, is that the New Orleans has the lowest health pool of Tier 8 cruisers. So compound this with the fact that they don't really have fantastic range, they don't really have you know, such great armor, this puts you at a pretty strong disadvantage, but this is kind of compensated by the fact that if you conceal and you play smart, it doesn't really matter. But nonetheless, it still has a pretty strong impact, especially after the Cleveland. The transition is quite strong, I would say. Third point, instead, is how it's meant to be played, or at least in my opinion. Okay, I've kind of hinted it here and there. I think you're basically a radar machine. Like, your sole function is to have radar. If you don't have radar on your consumables, then there's just no point in playing the New Orleans, more or less, in terms of utility-wise, in my opinion. But you're free to let me know in the comments if you have a different playstyle, and I'm very welcome, and you're very welcome to tell me about it. So yeah, you're a support machine, so especially with radar, you go and hunt out the destroyers, or the UK cruisers that are hiding in smoke, and so try to pair up with other ships and, you know, go on hunting missions. Go with a destroyer. Our destroyer smokes for you. You go in there, you pop the radar, and you counter the enemy smoke, which at that point can't really do anything and just get the hits and not respond. So yeah, killing DDs is the priority. You can also function as an anti-aircraft support vessel, especially at the beginning of the game. If the enemy aircraft carrier is trying to go for a one-hit on your carrier, you can do that quite well. The consumable is quite decent overall. You have, yeah, good anti-aircraft overall. It's not going to be as good as the German line, but still it's very decent. Then of course cruisers are excellent targets, not particularly far away. You'd like to keep that, you know, sweet spot of between 9 and 13 kilometers, I would say, to put your armor piercing to best effect against cruisers. Of course at lower ranges you're just gonna eat them anyway, but yeah. At that point, last but not least, as all cruisers, you can basically perform a quite efficient, let's say, annoyance tactics on battleships. So basically, plowing HE shells into their superstructure. Because all in all, you have a quite good fire chance at 14% that you can then buff by about another 2% with the talents. And overall, you have the highest HE damage per shell at tier 8. So that positions you, like, that puts you in the condition that you can also, you know, do some harassment on battleships. Just try not to engage them front on, and don't get spotted at the beginning, because everybody's gonna shoot you, and your limited health pool, you're gonna be dead. So, play sneaky. That's my final advice for this. So, guys, this is more or less it. I'm just gonna leave you to the rest of the gameplay. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe. And if you have any other ideas on how to play the NOLA, then by all means do let me know. So guys, that's pretty much for everything from me today. Bouncy Springs, over and out.